Ordinary people, unthinkable crimes. Welcome to Everyday Killers. This channel explores real cases where violence didn't come from monsters hiding in the shadows, but from people who looked normal, lived quietly, and blended in without raising suspicion. On the night of April 18, 1987, something unthinkable happened inside a quiet home in rural Illinois. By morning, an entire family would be dead. Not just murdered, but destroyed in a way that stunned even seasoned investigators. And nearly 40 years later, no one has ever been held responsible. This is the case of the Dardeen family, a crime so brutal and disturbing that many people who learn about it wish they hadn't. Russell Dardeen was 29 years old. He was quiet, polite, and deeply religious. He worked a steady job and attended church regularly. There were no known enemies, no risky behavior, no history of violence. His wife, Jeanette Dardeen, was 30 years old and 7 months pregnant with their first child. Friends described her as warm, gentle, and excited about becoming a mother. They lived in the small town of Ena, a place where serious crime was rare and doors were often left unlocked. By every outward measure, the Dardeens were living an ordinary, peaceful life, which is exactly what makes what happened next so terrifying. On Sunday morning, April 19th, Russell failed to show up for church. That alone raised concern. He had never missed a service without warning. Relatives tried calling the house, but there was no answer. Eventually, family members went to check on them. When they entered the home, they immediately knew something was wrong. What they found was not just a murder scene, it was a massacre. Russell Dardeen had been beaten to death with a baseball bat. The attack was violent and repeated, suggesting intense rage rather than panic. But as horrifying as that was, it was only the beginning. Jeanette had also been brutally beaten. Despite her injuries, she went into labor. She gave birth inside the house. The baby was born alive, and sometime after the birth, the newborn was beaten to death as well. Investigators believe the killer stayed inside the home long enough to witness the delivery, long enough to make a choice, and long enough to commit an act that shocked even veteran detectives. There was no sign of sexual assault, no evidence of robbery. Nothing appeared to be stolen. The baseball bat used in the murders belonged to the Dardeen family. There were no signs of forced entry, which means the killer was either let inside or felt comfortable enough to walk in uninvited. That detail would haunt investigators. Neighbors reported hearing nothing, no screams, no disturbance. There were no bloody footprints leading away from the home and no physical evidence that led to a suspect. The killer vanished without a trace. Over the years, police explored every theory. A personal grudge, a random intruder, a drifter, even the possibility of a serial offender. But every lead eventually went nowhere. There was no confession, no arrest, no trial. The case went cold, not because investigators stopped trying, but because there was nothing left to pursue. What makes this case especially disturbing isn't just the violence, it's the patience. The killer didn't flee after the first attack. They stayed, they waited, and then they killed again. This was not a crime of impulse. It was a crime carried out with terrifying calm. Today, the murders of Russell, Jeanette, and their unborn child remain unsolved. Someone knows exactly what happened inside that house. Someone remembers that night, and someone walked away without consequences. That's what makes cases like this so unsettling. Because the person responsible wasn't a stranger hiding in the dark. They were someone who blended in. Someone who looked ordinary, someone who went back to living their life. If you want to understand how killers hide in plain sight, this is Everyday Killers, Ordinary People, Unthinkable Crimes.